This is Chicago's Morning Answer
That's enough. Put down the mic.
on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. You got Governor Jelly Belly rolling out the graduated state income tax proposal, being lauded by the AFL-CIO Times for his courage, being lauded by the Democratic Coalition partners for his foresight and leadership in finishing the extraction of middle-income families from the state of Illinois. So you got that going. And then at the local level here in Chicago, we got the mayor's race on April 2nd. There are many, many taxes that have been proposed by C-suite executives, Civic Committee of the Commercial Club, as well as teachers' unions and labor and other labor unions and other socialist flotsam and jetsam.
Excuse me?
Everything.
I think I soaked in that tub last night.
Is you
Smoking and Jetsam.
did you use the flotsam salts?
Yes.
Everything from a city income tax to Karen Lewis's favorite.
Which one?
The transaction tax, the trading tax,
Oh.
financial transaction tax. So to get rid of these pesky exchanges that just keep hanging around the city, get rid of them already, and let them take their sundry business associates with them, the banks and the insurance companies and the accountants. Get rid of those professionals already, moneymakers, productive people. So annoying.
How dare they?
Now, that's just my opinion and Karen Lewis's. I never thought you'd get a serial trader, Trader, to agree. But then I read a blog post from our friend Jeff Carter, the founder of Hyde Park Angels Venture Capital Fund. He's a fintech guy now. For almost 20 years, he was a trader. And he also has gone full Ocasio-Cortez, Mary Flowers, Greg Harris, Jelly Belly, Karen Lewis on us. He is also now promoting the transaction tax.
Why?
Why would he do such a thing? Why don't we ask him? Jeff Carter joins us now. Jeff, thanks for being with us.
How are you? Good morning, Amy and Dan. I'd much rather wish Amy a good morning than Dan.
Well,
Thank
of course.
you, Jeff.
And stop sucking up. Pointsandfigures.com is the blog where you can get this post. So, Jeff, explain to me why you have betrayed your fellow traders and financial services professionals and now endorse this proposal.
It's very weird. So I was on the CME PAC, and we would fight this tax at the federal level every single year. Somehow it was in the budgeting software. The president had it, Congress had it. And we actually would have to fight it. And you would have to explain to people, like, how corrosive this tax is. And at the time, it might have been a penny a contract or 5 cents a contract. And one time I looked at Patty Murray, who was a senator from Washington, and I said, look, if you pass a 5 cent per contract tax, it's going to cost me like $50,000 a year. And she was like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. And I said, yeah, and by the way, I don't make money on every trade.
It turns out it's a volume business trading.
Yeah, well, I mean, there might be some risk involved, right? I mean,
yeah, that too.
So, and you look at how it's just idiotic. I had a reporter call me up and say, what do you think of the transaction tax? And I said, can you critically think? I mean,
Oh, my God.
with what they're doing, though, policy-wise, to the state and the city, we're seeing people my age, so I'm 57, move away, and Suzanne Mendoza will say, oh, it's because of the weather, which, you could make a case for that. If you're going to retire, you might want to retire to Arizona, Florida, wherever. But we're losing millennials. And when I look at, like, what Chicago, the history of Chicago, this place is a grease spot on the prairie without the Board of Trade. And the Chicago traders built the cultural institutions in Chicago. They built, the Art Institute. Bertha Palmer didn't go to, like, the merchants of Chicago to get money to go buy art in France. She went to the trading floors. The Civic Auditorium was built by traders. And so when I look at, like, for instance, now at Westwood Ventures, we just invest in fintech, right? And we see people coming out of high-frequency trading firms, and they are so talented. They're the best engineers in the country. And they want to come. That's the only thing that's attracting people to Chicago right now. And if they want to kiss it all goodbye, fine. I'm sick of fighting it. I'm sure they're right. I'm sure that I'm wrong. And so let's try it.
Well, where would the revenue
so
from
the state proposed $1 per contract transaction tax.
Oh my gosh. And then the transaction tax, where would the revenue go? To teachers' pensions, Chicago police pensions? Where would it go?
I'm sure we would have a budget surplus if we passed it. But what they don't understand is, so if I'm a market maker and I'm on the floor and you say, you know, what's there in corn? What's there in crude oil? What's there in the S&P 500? I make a two-sided market and I say, you know, I'm 5 bid at 6 or I'm whatever. Well, the spreads in these markets are so narrow that is a part of the cost of transacting. It's in the all-in cost. So you pay your broker some money to transact, and you might pay the exchange some money to transact, and you might pay some. And then there's the spread. Well, before there were Treasury futures at the Board of Trade in 1972, the spread on 30-year Treasuries was, I think, 18/32. And the day after, it was 1/32, which decreased the cost of financing the national debt.
Yeah, but
so these markets actually generate higher return for teachers' pensions, let's say. Okay. And so if they want to have a lower return on their pension, go ahead, pass the transaction tax, because the bid-ask spread is going to get super wide. You're not going to have as much liquidity. You're going to have more shocks in the market because there won't be as many market makers. But I think it will be the nail in the coffin in Chicago if they do.
Yeah, you actually make a rather bold prediction in your piece saying passing a transaction tax, which, by the way, just a quick aside, as I mentioned, sponsored by socialists, including Ocasio-Cortez at the federal level, sponsored by socialists at the state level, including Mary Flowers and Greg Harris, who's now in leadership in the House right underneath Madigan. You, though, predict passing anything like they've proposed would cause Chicago to become Detroit within a year. That's pretty bold in terms of the daisy chain effect. Explain why it would happen that fast.
So if you look at, like, for instance, Chicago Mercantile Exchange always touts, you know, the diversity of profit streams that they have. But the truth is it's really an interest rate exchange. That's the driver. In Chicago, they tout, we've got all these different industries here. The simple fact of the matter is that finance and risk management run Chicago. Without the exchanges here, the city goes to pot, because all the ancillary jobs that are created by these people, right down to bartenders, and especially divorce lawyers, but right down to it, it really runs on finance. And so when you look at a lot of traders that are here, let's say I'm making, to start at a high-frequency trading firm, they start them at like $400,000 a year or something like that, right? That's before your bonus and everything. So let's say you're making, $1 million or $2 million a year, and you're a really talented programmer, and you've got your house. Well, your house, let's say your house is worth, 1.5. You got a house in Bucktown or Lincoln Park or whatever. And they pass a transaction tax. So now all of a sudden the firm says, we're moving to Atlanta, which is a likely spot for everybody to land because the ICE is competing exchanges there. So you say, okay, what can I sell my house for? Some schmuck bids $1 million. What do I care if I lose $500,000 on my house? So I'm going to hit a bid. And that's what they don't understand, is these guys are just going to hit bids and move and get out. I had a friend who was here. He was worked for Facebook and did really well. He's from Green Bay, and he moved back to Chicago. He had a house in Hinsdale, and he just hit a bid to get out. He lost a couple $1 million on that house, but it's not a part of his net worth, right? It's not even a material part of his net worth. And that's the same with these guys. It's not a material part of your net worth, so you just hit the bid and get out.
Well, yeah,
But
but that's the point, though, isn't it? So the point is you want to empty the city and the Chicagoland area of these fat cats, and
Well-
the taxes that's proposed, like that transaction tax, that would just hit fat cats like you and your friends, and it would provide great services to middle income families and others who need great government services, and so that's how it's going to work.
You're exactly right. And Dan, it's going to make the housing market much more fair because now it'll be so much more affordable, right?
That's right.
So, but if you don't trade, you don't pay, right?
If you don't
eventually,
trade, you don't pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love
you
your
do pay
attitude with this.
because the bid-ask spreads in the marketplace are going to get a lot wider, and pension returns are going to go down, and there'll be more shocks to the market, so you're going to see more volatility. The other thing,
Pension return. Wait. Pension.
all this stuff right now is virtual, and so the CME doesn't own its building. It sold its server farm in Aurora, where they're paying $14 million for an acre of land to be close to it. With a flick of a switch, that business goes out of state. And then it's just a question of logistics about getting everybody else out.
The pension
Same
return.
in New York. By the way.
But the pension returns you're worried about. I mean that ripple effect that you're describing. Well, look, that's contemplated by the graduated state income tax that is going to make millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. So, I mean, the one tax will produce prosperity and resuscitate the middle-income families in Chicago, the transactions tax, Chicagoland. And then you got the graduated state tax over the top that's going to resuscitate the state as a whole and bring middle-income families back to central and southern Illinois as well. You see?
You're absolutely right. Because none of the people that I know that make over $250,000 a year or, have trusts of $250,000 where they draw income on it, they're not going to do anything in response to that tax. I'm sure they'll just sit here and take it.
Sure.
They won't redomicile. I mean, I went to a party in December, and there were a lot of it just happened to be a lot of wealthy people there, and not one of them was staying. And they didn't even pass the tax yet. I mean, not one.
Good, right? That's been the problem. The problem is that the wealthy people have lorded over Chicago and Illinois. And other than Pritzker, we need to get rid of them, or the Pritzkers.
Right.
So where does it go from here?
Guy.
The transaction tax, what happens next?
If they really did pass it, and I think Terry Duffy went down and testified last year, the chairman of the Merck, on it, and said we would move overnight. And I know Terry. I traded with him for 25 years. He means what he says. So, I don't think he's bluffing.
Yeah, well, but here's the other issue, though, too. I mean, the wealthy, the traders and stuff, play both sides of the aisle. They finance Democrats as much as Republicans. You've had, as I mentioned at the outset, the Civic Committee, the Commercial Club, all those executives that are on board for tax increases are saying nothing about the transactions tax. I mean, if they're all in the tank for the other side, or they're trying to middle it and think they're really being politically strategic and sensible, well, here's where we're at. How does your strategy look like it played out? Do you think you were right in the approach that you've taken for the last 30 years? Terry Duffy, CME, a Civic Committee, the Commercial Club, all the captains of industry in Chicago. Does it look like where Chicago and Illinois are that you made the right call for the last 3 or 4 or 5 decades? The answer is no, and that's, to me, why I read what I read in between the lines in your piece, why you're throwing in, because those wealthy threw in a long time ago and are out of here or are insulated from whatever happens.
It doesn't affect them. It absolutely doesn't affect them. And if you're set up where you're all in Illinois right now, it's very easy to go to a lawyer and pay them to get you out. And then, these guys travel enough that they can have enough days out of Illinois that it doesn't really matter. And the other thing that's very interesting that people underestimate is one of the things that states look at when they chase you down to make sure that you pay taxes in your state is your charitable giving, which is why when you go to Naples and you see like these amazing charity auctions, the wine auction and this art museum and all this stuff. It's because of all the people that move down there, they give to those things to show that, hey, I'm a resident here. I'm giving at my local charity. So I can guarantee you that the museums in Chicago and the local nonprofits here that rely on an income stream from local donations are totally underestimating the drop off in those as wealthy people move, because wealthy people do donate to those things. You don't get those from the teachers.
That's a great point. He is Jeff Carter. He is principal of West Loop Ventures, and he's now in the Burn It Down category, which is a growing category. The blog is pointsandfigures.com, the piece that we've been referencing. Let's do it this time. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Take care. Have a great morning.
You too.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/